Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you my first look at a lens from company Irix, which I've been aware of, been on my radar for the last year and a half or so, and I've had a number of requests from audience to do a review of the Irix, particularly this Blackstone 15mm f2.4 lens, and the opportunity's never really presented itself in the past, but because I was aware of the lens and because I knew that there was some interest in me doing a review, when Irix reached out to me a couple of weeks ago, I said sure, I'd be happy to take a look at it. Now, Irix, of course, is a relatively new lens maker and kind of a unique blend of countries that are a part of this. It is a Swiss-based company, and however, it has representation and seems like some of the leadership comes out of Poland, and the manufacturing takes place in Korea. And so this is truly a multinational lens right here. But Irix's approach to the two lenses that they have an 11mm and a 15mm lens, is that they come in two different variations. And so you have the same optical formula, the same lens basically, but in two different housing options depending upon your budget and your priorities. And so in the case of this 15mm, you have a choice of either the Firefly, which is more of an engineered plastics housing, a little less feature rich, but same lens. It also has some weather sealing. Or you have the option of going with the Blackstone finish here, and the Blackstone, of course, is the premium finish. And so instead of a engineered plastics, you have an aluminum and magnesium alloy housing, robust weather sealing. It's a beautiful lens. In fact, in a lot of ways, this most strongly resembles the Zeiss Distagon 15mm f2.8, which of course was an exceptionally expensive lens, nearly $3,000, and at the time that I reviewed it, and was at that point really the bar none best wide-angle option there was for a Canon or Nikon mounts, and particularly as a Canon shooter, that was true at that time. And so, of course, Irix enters into a field that's a little bit more crowded. In the last several years, there have been a number of excellent wide-angle options released, and some at the 15mm focal length, others at a 14mm focal length, and of course some better zooms and some different options in general. At the same time, however, I think that there's always going to be a market for beautifully made, optically, good wide-angle lenses at a reasonable price. And in this case, you have a choice of going for the Firefly at $475 in the US market, or for this Blackstone, $675. Well, when you consider the fact that you've got a build quality in terms of the materials used that is, fairly similar to that Zeiss Distagon lens that I reviewed years ago, and you have the same focal length and an even wider maximum aperture of f2.4 versus f2.8, and at under $700, you have a pretty appealing combination, provided that the optics hold up. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to take you in and give you a closer hands-on look at the various design and specifications, some of the unique features of this lens, and so that you can take a look at it maybe closer than what you have in the past and get a sense of whether or not it's a lens for you. So let's jump in, let's take a closer look. So the first thing I'd like to just kind of highlight here is that there is some style points to Irix for a unique presentation here. And it comes in like a metal, almost tin, which is a little more stylish than usual. It's got a diagram of the lens on it, some cool raised lettering. Anyway, now inside the case is another interesting approach in that the actual lens pouch is this kind of hard-edged, it's not neoprene, it's like a nylon, but with a reinforced hard shell. And so but it's relatively compact for the size of the lens, obviously very custom molded to the lens itself. And I have to once again give some style points to Irix for distinguishing themselves as a new brand, new lens maker from everything else that's out there. Now, unfortunately, reinventing the wheel In some cases that can be good, other cases not so good. And so once again, you got style points here on this rear cap that is unique. But unfortunately, as far as the cap itself, for one thing, it's a really, really lightweight plastic that feels a little bit cheap. Another thing that I do like as far as the front cap, particularly, I mean, here you've got a huge filter thread, and that's a huge cap, 95 millimeters. And so as a result, you've got this massive pinch cap here. But one thing that they've done to help to minimize that size is that they have kind of beveled the outer edge here. The byproduct of that is that it feels a little more compact than what it might otherwise. Now, once again, the materials here are very lightweight. However, the pinching quality of the cap itself, the mechanism works quite well, better than some, and so a plus there. Inside the cap, it says made in Korea, as does the lens hood here. Now, let me just talk about the lens hood for a second. Number one, it is certainly a plus that the lens hood itself is removable. Sometimes with a 15mm lens with a wide aperture like this, say like the original Zeiss Distagon 15mm f2.8, you had a fixed lens hood. That's pretty common with anything wider than this, that you have a built-in lens hood because of a big curved front element. So, I mean, certainly plus that you can remove the lens hood. Once again, the lens hood itself is plastic, but another nice feature is that they do have a window here where if you're using a circular polarizer, you can actually get at that and rotate it to the optimal position. And so that's a plus there. Also, I do think that again, the mechanism here is nice and definite, so it doesn't feel like it's going to accidentally either be opened or closed. And so a plus when it comes to that. Now, unlike some lenses that I've used like this, the actual, obviously you've got a very wide diameter here. The glass portion is relatively or comparatively small in there, and so a little bit less of maybe an issue when it comes to that. It should be it's recessed enough that with the lens hood on there, you should be able to protect that curved front element quite well. And then of course you actually do have the advantage here is that if you were so inclined, you could put a protection filter on there. And of course, having threads, even if they're a large 95 millimeters, is a plus. I've got a Tamron zoom lens that goes as wide as 15 millimeters, but because of the nature of the very curved front element, you cannot use traditional screw-on filters. And so that's the fact that you can use screw-on 95 millimeter filters is a plus. Now, one other thing that is also a plus here is that at the rear of the lens, you'll see that there is a little bit of a cutout here. And what that is designed to do is it allows you to use 30 by 30 millimeter gel filters. And so you can put those on there. It reduces your chances of having vignette. It also allows you to have a compact, say, neutral density type filter that would allow you to do long exposures without something very expensive at the front. Not everybody will utilize gel filters. However, nice that they thought about putting an option there. So plus for thinking things through when it comes to that. Before I cover things up back here, let me talk about two things. Number one, there is a weather sealing in this lens. And so they point out that the body itself in the Blackstone edition is aluminum and magnesium. It has an anti-scratch finish on it. So we've got a metal housing. We have weather sealing with they're saying a weather resistant exterior along with inner seals, an extra seal at the front element. They help to protect against dust and moisture. And so the language seems it's not ambiguous. It's a well-sealed lens. And so positive there. Another positive is that while this is a manual focus lens, you will find there's electronic contacts. It will communicate EXIF data. Also, this is an electromagnetic aperture diaphragm, and so you control aperture size from within the camera. And so as far as that goes, it will handle just like any other lens, or if you're familiar with, say, a Zeiss lens or something like that. And so you control aperture from within the camera body. The only thing that you need to do physically is to manually focus. So as mentioned, you've got a metal housing here. Their kind of coatings are called a neutrino coating, which, you know, is a little bit maybe similar to kind of the nano coating of say a Nikon lens. In this, you have etched in distance markings with what they call a high visibility fluorescent UV paint that will show up even in very dark conditions. And so, you know, interesting touch there. Another kind of unique kind of feature to this lens is that you can actually choose a specific focus position. Let's say that, you know, I'm out and I'm shooting landscapes and I've kind of got set up for hyperfocal distance. What you can actually do is you can rotate. If you rotate it to the left, you go into a lock position. Now that focus ring is not going to get inadvertently bumped, and so focus is going to remain. If you go to the far right, that is the unlock position, and that will allow you to go back to focusing. Now the focus ring itself is a lot like a classic Zeiss lens, metal ribbing, the center section moves. It is internally focusing, nothing is changing in terms of length. However, I do find, and I don't know if it's the nature of the relationship with this lock mechanism, but I do find that the damping is on the heavier side. It doesn't move quite as smoothly as what I would like. I mean, it's positive that it's definite that you're going to find the position you want. However, I would like just a little bit smoother operation. Now, certainly a plus here is that there is a very definite click for infinity there. And so you can actually rotate past there, and that may come into play if you're in, you know, changing weather conditions, but you actually do have a well-calibrated infinity stop there. And so that also is nice. The fact that this line comes down gives you a very definite point. If you're wanting to do hyperfocal technique, you've got a very definite position as to where you should focus that, and then you actually have a detent here at infinity. It's a different approach, however, it's one that I like. And so nice physical attributes here. Now the lens itself, as these lenses tend to be, it's very wide at the front. However, the lens itself is fairly compact. And so if you have got it on a camera body, throw it here on a Canon 5D Mark IV. This is a Canon EF mount that I am testing here. You can see mounted on the camera itself. I mean, that's not huge. It's a reasonably sized lens. In terms of the weight, even in the Blackstone, the physical heavier body, the weight is reasonable. It's 685 grams, a pound and a half. You know, not bad there. Overall length is about 4.5 inches. Diameter, I should say, is 4.5 inches, 114 millimeters. The actual length is right under 4 inches, 3.94 inches, or 100 millimeters. So once again, as I said, compact. And the fact that it's a fairly stubby lens means that, you know, while you've got some serious glass here, f2.4, of course, is an unusually wide aperture for this. Not to say it's the widest out there. I mean, I've tested, you know, 14 millimeter lenses with an f2.4 aperture, 14 millimeter lenses with an a 14 millimeter lens with an f1.8 aperture. But this is certainly wider than average. But despite that, you know, that glass in there, because the weight is fairly close to the camera body, balance is fine. So as you can see, this is a very nicely built lens, and you know, if it weren't for the fact that the focus kind of action is a little less smooth than what I would like. Other than that, I would say that it's an exceptional lens. I mean, I really like the materials that are used. The fact that they've gone for an kind of a scratch-resistant kind of finish is nice. I think that the size and the proportions of the lens and the presentation of it are all top-notch. And so, you know, whether that's copy specific to the copy I have or just kind of the general nature of the beast, I just wish that the damping was a little lighter, and more than anything, just that it had a little bit smoother quality to it. It has just a slightly, it's not quite what I would call gritty, but neither is it that buttery smooth action of the best manual focus lenses. But outside of that, this is a lens that handles nicely, and there's a lot of design features that I really like. I mean, having that detent, you know, at Infinity is great. That's a great option right there, and I like the way that things are set up in terms of the hyperfocal markings, and you know, just a lot of clever things that are integrated here. So kudos to Irix for trying to think outside the box and not just kind of, you know, do the same thing that everybody else is doing. I'll be back to you in the next episode, and we'll take a closer look at the image quality, maybe throw up some comparisons. I of course like to benchmark these lenses, and so I do have the Tamron 15 to 30mm f2.8, so that gives me a good benchmark that I've used against a lot of lenses. And so at 15mm we can kind of compare them across the board and see how this lens holds up optically. In the meantime, take a look in the description down below. What I have going already is an image gallery there, a link to it that you can take a look at photos coming from the lens. On top of that, of course, there will be buying links there if you'd like to purchase one for yourself. And of course, you can follow me there on social media. You can sign up for my newsletter or become a patron. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.